The right care, right at home. Australia's premier in-home care provider. Local legends want it. A Bowls Green is just up the road. Search Bowls Clubs near me.
From the wide outdoors to the great indoors, this is Without Bias.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Without Bias, right here on 1116 SEN. For Bowls Australia, a Bowls Green is right around the corner. Search Bowls Clubs near me. Val Febbo here with you on a really special episode of Without Bias tonight because we are celebrating the 20th anniversary of something remarkable. Steve Glasson winning his World Bowls Championships men's singles title. It happened in Ayr in 2004, 20 years ago today, probably right around the time that this show is airing. And well, without further ado, Steve Glasson joins me on the line. Bowls Australia Hall of Fame legend, world champion, former coach. He's done everything there is to do in this sport, and he joins me on the line to chat about everything to do with that match and a little bit of other things as well. Glass, welcome to the show and thank you for joining me.
Oh, Val, what an introduction. Thank you very, very much. So I look delighted to be on the show. Loving the work, you guys. I've been really enjoying watching the dynamic duo, the Chrissy and Ellen show that was just 2 years ago, the highlights of that on your social media platforms. And, you know, I could watch that last shot of Ellen's just all day. I mean, and to see their reaction and the joy. And, you know, it's a really great example of sport, the highs and the lows. And you see just our Australian pairs, but the whole contingent just going nuts with, you know, the most memorable victory ever and the heartache of the English, and they're two wonderful people, the English girls too. So, you know, you kind of, whilst we're one-eyed green and gold, you know, you sort of understand and respect the heartache that they went through. But what a match and what a shot from Ellen Ryan, you know, come back from behind. And as I say, I could watch that just time and time and time again. It's great to see. And, you know, that 2 years has gone quick. It only seems like the other day. So, and you mentioned sort of 20 years for mine, and it's probably quite similar. And for some of our young bowlers listening in, you think, my God, 20 years, that guy's so old. And you're right. But again, part of me feels like it's just the other day, and part of it seems like it was a lifetime ago. You know, it's quite amazing. And thanks for picking up on it. I wasn't even aware of it. So you guys, you don't miss a trick, you fellas. You're all over this.
We do try not to miss a trick, but you can go and watch the video on Bowls Australia's YouTube channel. If you have missed it, please go and watch it because you can see Glass's 21-15 win over Alex Marshall right there. We've digitised it. We've got it on YouTube ready for your viewing so that everybody can watch and revel in just how wonderful that match was and what an occasion it was for you, Glass. But we'll start with the lead-in to your match with Alex Marshall. So you've gotten through to the final. Your qualifying matches were good. You went 5-0 in the qualifying round, plus 60 in shot differential. But it was a little more difficult for you getting into the final with wins over William James, 21-17 of Eswatini, then Jason Greenslade, 21-20, Jeff Rabin as well, 21-20. Merton Isaacman, 21-19. So there were some close matches, but then losing to Kakao Turagabegi, 21-20. So it was tough for you in that sense. The conditions were tricky, but it wasn't the easiest run to the final. So how were you feeling when you got through?
Yeah, look, it was tough, and there was a couple of matches there that you mentioned. I mean, Thao, as we affectionately called him from Fiji, he was a difficult unit to beat. You know, he was up and about, and every time he played Australia, you know, he gave us a really hard time. And I think when Kelvin played the singles for Australia, he had a similar sort of tough bout with him. But I remember Jason Greenslade, you know, the Welsh great, and of course Jeffrey Rabkin, who I still stay in touch with to this day from Israel. And they were two quality players, and both of those matches I was well behind. I think I was down about, you know, if I said 19-12 or something like that in both matches, and just hung in. You know, following, if I can make any sense of this, but following winning the Worlds, you know, and people would say, well, you're the best player in the world, and I never once ever thought that. You know, there was no chance of that being the case. But I guess one of my attributes were, be it good or bad, that I was pretty stubborn, and friends of mine will say I'm still very stubborn, but I was pretty stubborn out in the green as well. So there was that sort of Aussie determination to just never give in, you know, and just to fight all the way. And I think that was one of the attributes that helped get me through to that final against Alex. And on that occasion, it paid off, you know. So it was hard work. The greens were tough there in Scotland, at Northfield in Ayr there. So, it was foreign conditions for us. So it really was just, fight or flight, really, and just dug deep, and really, you need the bounce of the ball on occasion too, which is probably one of the intricacies of it all. But, certainly it was tough going, and it was a great relief to make the final, but there was also that real determination to do well. It was playing Alex Marshall in his home ground, his home sort of area. And I'd lost the final of the World Singles 4 years earlier to Jeremy Henry in South Africa after a massive big storm, and Jeremy played very, very well. So, I didn't want to go 2-2 in World Singles finals, so I was really determined, but knew I was up against it against, the great man and the guy I still totally admire and respect as the best player, in the modern game, and to play him on his home field, which was probably a benefit to me because there was a lot of pressure on Alex where there wasn't much on me. So maybe I was able to take advantage of that.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Losing 4 years earlier to Jeremy Henry, how much drive did that give you? And you mentioned you didn't want to go 0 from 2 in the finals, but how much drive did that give you to push on and say, you know what, I'm not losing again?
Yeah, it was definitely a motivator because I know, 4 years earlier, I was probably disappointed to lose the final. I'd had good form going into the final. A match against Tony Alcock, the reigning champion in those days, in the semi-final. And again, I come from behind win there. And we had a big storm at lunchtime in South Africa, and Jeremy just came out and handled the conditions better than I did. And I was disappointed with that effort, So I certainly had that motivation to go out there. And I think any time you step on a rink with Alex Marshall, if you're not motivated anyway, you really shouldn't be there because you're in, sublime company there, and you know you've got to play to your best and potentially hope he's off a little bit as well, because he's that good. So, but the pressure was all on him. There wasn't really any pressure on me because he was on his home ground. There was a lot of expectations, and we all know Alex's reputation. So, I think it sort of favoured me in that case that, I could go out there and play a little bit freely and just put my head down and was probably the underdog for the match, which I certainly don't mind at all.
Even before that match, he had this aura about him. He'd still been around for 10 years, let alone what he's achieved since that moment in Com Games and World Championships bowls. But he still had that aura about him. But how did you see him before the match? Did you feel that he was nervous? Did you feel that there was a lot of pressure on him when you were there?
Yeah, I stuck a little bit clear of any media, and sort of 20 years ago wasn't much social media. It was all sort of newspapers, and I stuck away from them. But I went up in the morning into the village or the township of Ayr and just sort of went around doing a bit of shopping. I think I had hair in those days, so I got a bit of a haircut, I think. And it was the talk of the town, and some people recognised me in the street, some didn't, but you could hear everybody talking about it. I walked past the club about 3 hours before the game, and the grandstands were nearly full, and I've never played in front of such an audience before, a big crowd like that before. So the place was buzzing, and I ran into Alex at the shopping centre, and he sort of said to me, "Oh, Steve," he said, "have you seen how full the grandstands are already?" And I said, "Yeah, I have," and Alex is a pretty cool customer, he's and I just sensed that maybe that was an air of either anticipation or nervous energy or excitement. But I if this makes any sense, I tried to interpret it my own way that, yes, there was a bit of pressure on Alex for this final, home ground, et cetera, et cetera. So I tried to use that, the way I interpret it as a benefit to me to say, well, okay, the guy is under the pump a bit. There's, all the papers are writing up Alex Marshall and all the expectations are there. So I'm going to use that to my advantage and say the heat's on him to perform here today. Now, whether or not that was the case, who will know, but it certainly was part of my mindset, which probably helped a little bit. And even during the game, and it's fair to say, Alex didn't have his best game, and that's a major factor why I was able to win that game. He is the best in the world. So, but he even got heckled by one or two of the very pro-Scottish supporters there trying to get more out of him, but it probably worked, in a negative manner. It sort of inspired me again and put him under a little bit more pressure. So there was all these sort of external things going on that hopefully, I was able to use just to keep me positive and keep me sort of, focused on the job at hand, I guess.
We'll get to the in-match stuff right after this on Without Bias. Val Febbo with Steve Glasson OAM talking about his World Bowls Championships men's singles victory over Alex Marshall in the final 20 years ago today, right here on Without Bias. Stick around.
The right care, right at home. Australia's premier in-home care provider. Local legends wanted. A Bowls Green is just up the road. Search Bowls clubs near me.
From the wide outdoors to the great indoors, this is Without Bias.
You're listening to Without Bias right here on 1116 SEN. Val Febbo and Steve Glasson, my special guest on the show tonight to chat about his 20th year or 20th anniversary of his World Bowl singles title over Alex Marshall in Ayr, Scotland. Now, Glass, we spoke about the lead into the match and how both of you were feeling. You sort of felt as though the pressure was off a little bit, considering that Taddy was, the home favourite. There was pressure on him. He already had that aura. He was also 10-0 in his matches leading in, so plus 64 on shot difference in his qualifying round, and then in the championship round he was plus 59. So he was in good form and started the match well, winning the first 3 ends, going up 5-0 before. After that, you made a barnstorming run to get to 9-5. How was the dynamic in those first few ends? What was going through your mind when you were down 0-5? But then oppositely, what was going through your mind when you're up 9-5 and you'd really turn the tide?
Yeah, it's, I've got to dig deep in the vault there. I do remember being down 5-0, but wasn't too perturbed about it. I think Alex came out and was playing his typical good shots and just fine in the green. The green was very, very, very tough that day. It had sort of dried out in Scotland, and the mat areas were really thinned out, and they were quite, fast for Scotland standards. But the middle section where the mat doesn't go down was very thick and lush. So I was trying to adjust to those different paces, which you often get in the Northern Hemisphere, and finding your feet, and I suppose just sussing each other out. So I don't recall much of what happened or what I did right or what fell the right way to go to 9-5. But at no stage, I do recall being 5-0 down and at no stage thinking I'm out of this, and it was only 21 up. But, I'd sort of come from behind in previous matches at that championship and I wasn't perturbed at all. I sort of knew that I was still, very much feeling comfortable out there, knowing it was very, very tricky. And if anyone does watch the game, I can assure you it's not the greatest game because it was, it was harder than it looks, with the different paces on the rink and even the bowls. We had to sort of select certain hands that we knew that our bowls could actually react on positively. Depending on where the jack was, depending on where the mat was, it varied. So it was really challenging getting those tactics right, picking the right shots to play, using the equipment that we had that, the bowls could actually potentially play that shot on other hands or on other lengths. Sometimes, as much as it looked a shot to play, it was impossible just the way the bowls were reacting, on that rink. So it was really challenging. But I guess, I suppose at 9-5, you're feeling pretty good, but you're playing the master. So, again, there's no real excitement there yet. You've just got to keep your head down and, just grind it out because, I just, as I say, I have the utmost respect for Alex, have done for 20, 25 years. And that, there's a long, long way to go. And as you say, he was undefeated right through. And he's the sort of guy that can put, 10 or 15 shots in you in half an hour. So, there's no relaxing.
And that's exactly what happened. And Taddy, after going down 9-5, nets a full count of 4 and then a double to go ahead 11-9 before you guys went into a little bit of a holding pattern. There were 3 lead changes in a row on ends 14 to 16, and it ends up after 17 ends at 15 apiece. You're both within 6 of victory. You'd actually won more ends at 10 to 7. Was that going through your mind, the fact that you'd actually won more ends? So did that give you the confidence to say, look, he's having to pull out some pretty special things to get me. I'm on track. I've just got to keep following those processes and keep sticking to those hands that you know.
Yeah, no, I had no idea of the end count, none whatsoever. It was all scoreboard and that focus to try and get to 21. And I do remember it being 15 all, and I'll probably remember the rest of that match from there on then. To be fair, but again, it got harder and harder today. It was quite a warm day in Scotland as well. That I remember that, and there was no real sort of high performance in those days. Fortunately for me, I had Robbie Dobbins on the sideline as coach, but you just could not move in the joint. So water was, rare at best. So, it was getting hotter. And when I say hot, it was probably high 20s, but, a lot of people there, very, very dry. And yeah, it was, quite taxing as well. And I remember coming off after the game, I'm getting in front here, sorry, but we were both pretty much dehydrated because we had little or no water through the game and didn't have access to it. So, but anyway, I digress. 15 all. Sorry, Val.
But I think you look at that, there wasn't much shading as well. If people go back and watch the footage on Bowls Australia's YouTube channel, you'll see that there was no shade. There was no sort of ability for you to take any sort of cover. So how do you try and not focus on that sort of stuff?
Yeah, you don't. I mean, it's just head down, focusing on what you got to do to try and win that game. There was no other real thoughts. You knew you were a bit partial, all that sort of thing, but it wasn't even a consideration. You just, I'm here to do a job and get your head down and get on with it. So, yeah.
15 all. You'd go
bang,
bang, bang, bang, matches over in the next 4 ends. What was that like for you when you're sitting there and you just in complete control in that point where you just sort of, you weren't in complete control?
No, definitely not. So I think I recall it going 18-15 from memory. And then I think at 18-15 I had two and I had a chance to draw for game and I had to get through again the heavy stuff to get to the quicker stuff. And it probably finished about 4 foot short, but I was probably about 1 foot short on weight, you know what I mean? Just the way the green was reacting. So I think then I went to 20-15, if I got this right.
You did.
And that was a real missed opportunity. It should have been game over there, to be fair. And then the next end, Alex actually held a really good three, which would have made it 20-18. And in those days, you could give them that away if you won the end, that sort of thing. So he held a really good three, and I had to make a big decision with my last bowl to change to a hand I'd hardly used. In fact, I think I had 2 cracks at it, and I had a look at it with my third bowl. Not confident at all of playing it because it was a hand I hadn't played, a length I hadn't played, and I wasn't convinced my bowls would react on it. So I had, I think, 2 goes at it, but I managed to get it with my last and win the game. But, had I missed that three, and as I say, he played a really good head, I remember that. Had I missed that, it's 2018. I would have been going first here at the last bowl. Who knows what would have eventuated. So that was a big one. I still recall that shot sort of more or less, so yeah.
Is that one of the favourite shots that you've played throughout your career, to be able to go onto a hand that you hadn't played in those sorts of conditions? Let's not forget that it was windy as well. How special was that?
Oh, it's very special. I think I haven't sort of never, just it's hard to explain, but it was definitely, I guess, if you're worried about pressure, it was on then, But I still felt really good about it. I just knew I had to give my bowl a chance. And as the bowls guys would have it, I landed on Alex's, I think his nearest one, and sat there and stunned for shot. And that was the end of the match. And it was quite surreal. And I still recall standing on the podium, and there's messages coming in and there's messages from home and that sort of thing. But standing on the podium, it was a really humbling moment, if I can make sense of this, because there's no greater honour than standing on the podium and singing the national anthem in the sport that you love, the sport that you've committed to. And at that very moment, you look back and you think about all these people that have helped you, to get to that stage, to be singing the national anthem. And it was really, I still remember that very fondly, just thinking about all these people, that either helped me along the way or coached me or mentored me or gave me a kick up the bum when I needed it or gave me encouragement and that sort of thing, and club support, all this sort of stuff that went on. And it was truly a humbling moment to stand there singing the national anthem. It's one I'll never forget. And looking back, and that's really what I did while the national anthem was on, was just thinking about all these wonderful people, the support I have from family and club mates and this sort of thing, coaches, that sort of stuff. So it's one I recommend that if anyone ever gets a chance, lap it up because it was wonderful.
And you mentioned, Glass, that it was surreal after you sort of realised you won. What went through your mind in the immediacy after the match, as well as when did it actually sink in that you were the world singles champion?
Oh, I don't know if it's sunk in for a while. I remember flying back from the UK and we were joking around on a plane, I think, and saying we're flying over Europe, and someone said, "Oh, Glass, you're the champion of that country there," or, just stupid stuff like that, "Oh, you're the champion of that," just joking with my teammates, they were funny buggers. So, it's sort of, I don't think it sunk in on the day. I remember being interviewed. We had a press conference afterwards, and people were asking that very question. I said, it's just a relief, after having lost, played for Australia for a while, having lost a singles final 4 years earlier. I actually, at that particular moment, found it a relief. But Robbie Dobbins was sensational. I mean, Robbie is a guy that he was our our ringside coach, and Robbie always wear his heart in his sleeve. And we had a big team meeting beforehand, before the championships kicked off, and what Robbie sort of expected from us and what we expected from Robbie. And one of my comments to Robbie was, mate, you can't show any emotion because, if you play to lose one, sometimes Robbie would, not intentionally shake his head or hit his leg or be frustrated and I said, mate, you can't show any of that throughout the whole thing. And it's fair to say, I put him through hell and back, playing that singles event. And there were times there where I'm sure he would have just liked to have walked away. And he hung in there. He never showed an ounce of sort of emotion or frustration or joy or anything. We didn't want any of that from him. And he taught me through a couple of pretty serious moments in early games about tactics and things like that. So I think his contribution to that was enormous, in the fact that this poor bugger sat there for a couple of weeks and suffered enormously, and we came out the other side. So I think that I think there's a shot of us having a big hug at the end there, and full credit to Robbie. There's no way I would have succeeded without his support and his commitment to our overall game plan as well.
And Glass, one final one. 20 years later, what does it mean to you still? The fact that, you won that, you achieved one of the greatest accolades, or you received and won one of the greatest accolades that you can win in bowls, the blue ribbon singles at the World Bowls Championships. What does it mean to you to look back on it and say, wow?
Oh, I'm very honoured. There's no doubt about that. I think the bigger thing is, to have been involved in bowls was my chosen sport. I played cricket and rugby league and things in my younger days and things like that, but bowls was my chosen sport in the end, and to go on and play for your country in your chosen sport, it's a huge honour. And I still remember just as fondly the very first game I ever played for Australia. I led for Rex Johnston in New Zealand in the Asia Pacific Games, and I remember that very fondly too, although terrifying leading for Rex, and I mean that affectionately. But it is an unbelievable honour to do it, and I look back on all that very fondly. I'm quite a realist to know that I sort of won the singles in Scotland against Alex Marshall. You need the bounce of the ball sometimes, and I got that. And there's been plenty of occasions where that hasn't happened. So you accept it, and you move on, and just a great honour. And as I say, it was a super privilege to stand on the podium, in the blue ribbon singles event, singing the national anthem, representing your country, and having those fond memories. So I look back at it very fondly. I can assure you, if anyone watched me play now, they would think, my God, how did he ever win that? Because I've got, I often say 47 different deliveries now, and you never know which one next, which is quite challenging. But no, it's all fun. I'm not playing much these days, but, I've also got to pay tribute to Alex Marshall. He's still in the game. He's still, one of the best in the business, and he's gone on to win so many unbelievable titles, and just to be on the same rink as a guy in that event, it's a great honour, win, lose or draw, so that's a bonus. But full credit to him. He's one of the greatest of all time, and I hope he continues to enjoy his success, but enjoy the game most of all. So, and he's nearly half Australian now, the amount of time he spends down here, so it's always good to catch up with him. And, it's great for the Australian viewers to get a taste of Alex Marshall as well, and just see how good he is.
Exactly right. I concur. And it's an honour. You said it was an honour for you to stand up on that podium and receive that gold medal and sing the national anthem. Well, it's an honour for me to chat to you about that wonderful day in Ayr, Scotland, 20 years ago today, where you became a legend of this sport. You're a Hall of Fame legend in Bowls Australia, and it's so well deserved. Steve Glasson, thank you very much for recalling that match with me and spending some time today to have a chat about it. And thank you very much again, and well done on everything that you achieved, because it is such a wonderful, wonderful thing for the sport of bowls.
Thank you, Val. You're too kind. I'm very grateful. Thanks very much. And we got the Australian Indoor coming up, so I'm looking forward to watching some of the best in Australia go around and do battle in that. So everybody get on board and enjoy that tournament as well. You'll see some classy bowls for sure.
Steve Glasson joining me on Without Bias. What an absolute superstar he is. He's just as good as talking about his matches as he was playing them, and that's saying something. He is brilliant and so captivating. It was a pleasure to hear what he had to say about that glorious moment in 2004, and a big thank you to him for joining me on the show. But that's about all we've got time for on Without Bias this evening, and remember, you can catch up via Bowls Australia's YouTube channel on all of our previous episodes, as well as subscribing to the Right Line, BA's official podcast, on Apple, Spotify and Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts from. Follow BA on social media, Facebook, Instagram, X, LinkedIn and YouTube, as well as bowls.com.au for any news and updates, with, of course, the Australian Indoors coming up next week. Looking forward to that, as Glass alluded to. But a big thank you from me, Val Febbo, and a big thank you to Steve Glasson once more for joining me on Without Bias. We'll catch you next week.